Washington, D.C. is someone who's definitely not a Mameluke. She is the president of the National Pro-Life Union and the first African-American woman to ever be named as a semifinalist in the Miss American Beauty Pageant, Dr. Gardner. Dr. Gardner, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, Dr. Gardner, what does this day mean to you as we reflect upon the great man himself, Martin Luther King Jr.? What does this day mean to you personally?
Well, you know, I remember when I first heard Dr. King speak. I was just very young, sitting in front of the television, just like everybody else. And of course, the biggest day was that day here in Washington, D.C., and just the multitudes who came out to see him, the way my parents especially were just glued to the set, just watching, just like the world was watching, and just knowing that something very important was taking place.
You are someone having the distinction of being the first African-American woman to be a semifinalist in the Miss America Beauty Pageant. You are someone who is an example of what Dr. King dreamed of and spoke about. I'm not saying that America is perfect in all its ways, but you must be proud of the fact that you are an example of that. What might Dr. King say if he saw America today, do you suppose?
You know, I think I know exactly what he would say. You know, when you think about everything that's going on in this country, especially with Gardner and what happened in Ferguson, and of course Gardner in New York,
yes.
His death. There's so much happening. Of course, there's a lot of. It's not perfect, as you just stated. America's not perfect, but we've come so far, and we are growing. And I think the really sad thing is that, and this is something that Dr. King wrote, and I thought it was very important to bring this today. And here's what he said: "As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems." He then stated, offering deepest compassion is the only thing that will bring about change, especially social change. And he said, non-violent action. So what we're seeing here with all of the violence and all of the rioting in the streets doesn't help anybody. It doesn't solve anything. I think that we have, unfortunately, the racial divide is actually growing. And since, over the past especially the past few decades, we've seen, I think, races come together more. And just within the past few years, all of this is it seems to be falling apart. And I think that Dr. King would be very saddened by that.
Dr. Gardner, there are some profound comments you made there. Number one, you talked about the peaceful man, Dr. Martin Luther King, not the man of a weapon, a man of words, a man of compassion.
Exactly.
We had Dr. Alveda King, his niece, a woman I'm sure you are probably familiar with. She was on just before you.
Good friends, yes.
She was on just before you, and that was the backbone of her message, what you just articulated. Something else you brought out, Dr. Gardner, without mentioning names, but I'm going to mention names. I'll play the bad guy here. We have seen, in my opinion, in my belief, we have seen race relations come together over the last few decades, but we have seen those relations fray apart in the last few years. The last few years have been under the, President Obama has been in the White House. Is it by coincidence that those race relations have suffered, or do you believe that we have someone in the White House today who polarizes Americans by their skin color?
I, first of all, did not support President Obama, and it's really sad because, you know, I think everybody hoped. I mean, I even hoped, even though I did not support him with my vote, but I even hoped, you know what, maybe he's going to get in there and maybe things will change. Maybe. I think we all hoped that there would be real change, good change. And what we see, that's just not the case. As a matter of fact, with this black president, there's been more of a divide than ever before. And I just think it's a very sad thing that is his legacy. What he will leave behind is the fact that America is being torn to shreds and really divided in such a way that we haven't seen in many, many years. And I think that's a very sad thing. I think Dr. King, as I said before, would be very saddened by that because it was not expected. even for all of those who did not vote for President Barack Obama, I think that there was a little bit of hope there, thinking, well, maybe,
right.
Maybe, and it didn't happen.
And yet, if we look at the positive side of this, President Barack Obama, based upon what you just said, Dr. Gardner, symbolizes the message of Dr. King. Judge people based upon the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And that's what you are saying right now, as I, like you, have been disappointed by what Barack Obama represented in 2008 and what he's come to be. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
Oh, I disagree very much with that. As a matter, I mean, I do agree with you. The thing is that it's like you mentioned my very dear friend, Dr. Alveda C. King, who is the daughter of Reverend A.D. King, Martin's only brother. And she always says, we're all members of the same race, members of the human race. And I think it's necessary for us to get back to that and realize that we're all one people in God's eyes.
Final question, Dr. Gardner. Is there any other issue outside of race that Dr. King, Martin Luther King, you believe would have embraced today as a civil rights movement? I bring this up because one of those issues which is thrown into the category is equal marriage, gay, same-sex marriage. Do you believe that deserves to be categorized with the struggle that African Americans have gone through historically in America, something that Dr. King would say deserves the attention of himself and others had he been with us today?
Absolutely not. We should remember that Dr. King was first and foremost a minister of the word. He was a follower of Jesus Christ. And of course, being that, he knows exactly what the Bible states about homosexuality. And I think that the thing that, if there was anything that he'd be really, really determined to make better, would be the fact that the abortion rate, especially the rate among African Americans in this country, is astronomical. We see the abortion rate going down across the country, but in the American urban areas, in the inner cities, the abortion rate among blacks and Hispanics has skyrocketed. It has gotten to the point where more than 50% of all abortions are being performed on black babies in New York City, in Atlanta, Georgia, and many of the other cities across the country that have high populations of African Americans and Hispanics and minority people.
Dr. Gardner.
So I think he'd be. Yeah.
He would be against that. All right, well, listen, we're out of time. I didn't mean to interject there and cut you short, but we got your message loud and clear.
Not at all.
I want to thank you for joining us, your first time on the show. We look forward to having you back. And again, we appreciate your comments on this Martin Luther King Day.